Recording. Episode 6.
Hello.
So what were you going to say?
Oh yeah, there's a Instagrammer artist or an artist on Instagram. There's a lot of them, but this one specifically is a dude called Boss Logic, and he's been, if you're familiar with him, he's pretty popular for making mock-ups of various pop culture art, specific, usually movie posters, pertaining to DC, Marvel, and a lot of the geeky cool stuff. And so a couple years back, or maybe a year or so ago, sometime in the past, when The Mandalorian was being made or in talks or developments, he did a mock-up that he normally does. This one in particular was of Ahsoka, the Jedi alien lady woman warrior that's very popular, and he did a mock-up of her starring Rosario Dawson, who is now actually playing her in real life. And earlier this year, when there was talks of the Solid Snake movie being made, he did a mock-up of Oscar Isaac in the role. And in both cases, the actor saw that and it's yes, I would love to be a part of that.
So when you say mock-up, you mean he was
it's like a
satirist kind of thing, but
no, it's
serious?
It looks pretty legit.
Oh, okay. So almost like a cosplay-ish type thing? Kind
of, yes. It would be I guess cosplay if the actor, I guess a Photoshop type of cosplay.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
But he did a mock-up of the alien with Rosario Dawson's face in a way that, really sold the idea of her in the role. And then he did another one. And it's also crazy stylized. This is the tone of the movie and all that. In terms of lighting and then the text and the title text and the tagline text, and all these things to really kind of hype you up to the idea of this actress in this role or this guy in that role. And in both cases, in a few other instances, it caught buzz of the actors attached to it. I think John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic and his wife Emily Blunt as Invisible Woman. That's kind of another popular movement, lack of a better term, that's happening on the peripheral. But anyways, besides the point, he did one of Oscar Isaac as Solid Snake. You look, pretty legit. And Oscar Isaac was super excited, yo, I would love to do this. And yesterday, it's been announced that Oscar Isaac has been cast as Solid Snake. And it's been really cool to see, this year, two fan casts kind of come to pass. Yeah. It's interesting. We don't know how much he had a role in that.
Sure. But it's also it's almost it sounds like it's using technology to basically Photoshop someone in kind of as a role. Yeah. Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah.
It's almost like casting someone before you're casting them.
Yeah, for sure.
It's it's almost like you said, a mock-up or making a prototype of what this person would look like in this role.
Yeah.
Or something.
Jim Carrey as the Joker. That's a common one that's been done over the years. Yeah, it's just really cool to just selling specifically the fans on the idea of hey, this could work, this would be cool, this would be exciting. And then or kind of pushing studios to see hey, see how many people are excited about this, that you already have that built-in audience.
Right.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's cool. Welcome to the Kinetik Creators podcast, where we break down and talk about interesting creative happenings, events, and news. I'm Robert.
And I'm Simon. Thanks for joining us today. We have a lot to talk about and break down for you all. So, let's get started.
Welcome back to episode 6.
Hello. Missed you.
We took a little break after Thanksgiving, and we are back
We didn't leave you alone at Thanksgiving, if you know.
We didn't. And if you hadn't seen it, you need to go follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We had a little Thanksgiving something out there for you.
A little special.
A little special.
Specials.
It was unexpectedly controversial,
oh,
too.
Man. For the record, I didn't see any lies, but...
I don't know. Is this a time when like YouTube personalities make like those apology videos? Do we need to do one of those?
No, I think first we deny, then double down, then.
Oh, okay.
Episode 7, or yeah.
Okay.
Episode 7.
So
had the piano music.
The coming clean episode.
Yes. Or we need to talk.
The we need to talk episode. Well, this week, I'm going to start with something really fun. Something that I think everybody's always wanted. If you've ever played any, specifically for me, Mario game or Mario Kart game,
it's a dream come true.
Is Super Nintendo World has been announced, and if you missed that,
well, we're here for you.
And you probably live under a rock. It's going to be launching in Universal Studios Japan, so you have to go to Japan.
That's so far away. That's unfair.
So this is obviously going to be for a very much post-pandemic world when we get that little vaccine that's coming soon and we can all travel again and go places. Super Nintendo World coming soon. February 4th next year is when it's launching. So that's pretty quick. That's pretty soon. I'm pretty impressed. And it looks dope. It looks super cool.
Mario Kart in real life. And what are like some of like the features or things we can expect to do at the Super Nintendo World?
Well, that's a good question. I have not seen a lot of detail about exactly what kinds of rides they're going to have. There's clearly a Mario Kart ride. There's going to be, I imagine, games and things like that modeled around some of those, mini games and stuff and all that kind of thing. But
right now they're teasing a lot of like Mario centered things, but nothing specific.
There's apparently going to be a Mario Kart themed ride.
Yes, please.
Which will have an AR headset, so you can visualize the race as you're on the roller coaster. You can throw shells at your fellow racers, use power-ups, and that might be one of the first rides that I'm aware of that will you be using AR for one thing. I don't know. I have not heard of any other rides that are using an AR headset specifically. We do have things like the Harry Potter world kind of augmented reality rides that are using screens and projection, but I'm not aware of any rides that are using an actual headset that is augmenting the world around you.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I feel like one of the Star Wars rides in Disneyland, Disney World has something similar. Something that's, immersive and like kind of narrative based, but
right.
I think that might, again, what you're saying, similar to Harry Potter, is more environmental.
Yeah. If the renders
in this promo,
in the promo are what it's going to look like, and I assume they're renders or they might be actual videos. It's actually kind of hard to tell, which is kind of funny. But man, it's going to look incredible. Like they've really like done a great job with this thing, taking what is a very traditionally digital world and kind of imposing it, onto real life. And I think like this level of detail, I personally like haven't seen anything like this. I mean, the Star Wars world is probably the closest thing that we're seeing in terms of detail and like immersiveness that they're creating here. So, if you are interested in that, next year you can go once you get your...
This is your time to get your passport set.
That's right. It's a great time. Make sure you do it.
Not gonna lie, it kind of feels like Japan is kind of showing off like we did good in this pandemic. We did our homework, and so now we get to play Mario,
and we get to play with Gundams and all that. So,
but hey, I don't have anything.
Well, so fun little treat for you. The next thing that we want to talk about is
the future.
The future, specifically David Beckham's future. So David Beckham is, I guess he's like the patron of the World Malaria campaign here that's put on by, I think it's In Malaria Now or something along those lines.
Yeah, In Malaria Now.
Malaria Must Die is the name of the campaign. So we're close enough. So he stars in a new campaign where he's basically speaking to us from a world in which malaria is no longer in existence. Some point in the future, the idea is that this is within our lifetimes. This is within his lifetime. And he's an old man. And as you're watching the ad, there's kind of this transition moment, and you see him as current David Beckham, all in one ad. As you know, he's going from talking about, hey, we've ended malaria; it's no longer the most deadly disease in the world. But now we're kind of talking about how today in 2020 we still need to work to end it. We still have work to do to get there. This is the latest in a series of ads that the Malaria Must Die campaign has done with David Beckham. And this is one of the more interesting ones, especially because of their use of AI and machine learning to age David Beckham, or to use that as a kind of reference for him.
Yeah, it was very effective. This is my first time seeing it while you were talking about it, and like that transition from like the AI or the 70-year-old mock-up of David Beckham and the slightly younger looking David Beckham, or present day David Beckham. It was just very effective to how like this is all, it's like a single shot rotating from like the back of his head to the front of his face, when he's able to look the viewers in the eye, or us in the eyes, and talk about like this future where malaria is dead, and because of the efforts, the ingenuity, and all of that teamwork that's going to be needed to kind of end the disease that's been ending so many lives.
Mm-hmm. The thing that's interesting about this disease, or not the disease, the video. The thing that's interesting about the video is that so they're touting kind of this use of AI, but the AI, as far as I can tell, is not the end result in the video. So when you watch the video, you're not watching the AI, or at least you're not watching only the AI. Basically what they did, and this is kind of an interesting breakdown of how they made it, is they took David Beckham, they recorded him reading this speech on a green screen. They found essentially a double that is older, that looks kind of like him, probably more about face shape and probably more about geometry more than is like exactly looking like him, who is older. And they basically composited the two with a company called Digital Domains, a visual effects company. I believe they've worked on things like the Avengers.
I was about to say that sounds like the exact same technique they used for the old Captain America sequence.
I believe it's the same technology that they call. It's called Charlatan, that they used to combine these two guys together. And the reason they did this is not necessarily because it makes a great end result. It's because it's so that they did not have to do a 3D scan of David Beckham's face to then make the geometry to age him in the visual effects software, which is normally you would have to have a whole team of artists going in, very much like what they did for Captain America, to go in and age him and make him look like he is him, but older, with the wrinkles and the way even just our skin and our muscles droop in our face and our ears and all these different places that can change the way we look as we age. So basically it allowed them to do this project in less than 8 weeks. Normally it would be a much bigger team, probably around the same time, at least for a shot about this length. I think it's about a minute long. So yeah, it's a really interesting use of this technology to kind of aid in that creative process and aid the work of these visual effects artists.
Yeah, and I think using that technique, combining real life human, and then kind of using technology to kind of like stitch them together rather than recreating from the ground up. You really eliminate that. You make the uncanny valley just that much smaller. And again, I think that'll one is more effective in terms of like time and budget and effort that will that's going to be needed to kind of like make that 3D model more effective. But it's also it'll be emotionally more effective that you're able
Absolutely.
to connect with this slight moonshot of a goal to eradicate a disease. By looking, a real this by being able to see a real person in the eyes, it makes it that much more believable. It adds that trust and eliminates a lot of barriers that kind of come with
Basically recreating someone digitally.
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting too, that as you were just talking, was like, it's almost like a time traveler, like getting like this glimpse into the future, right? And if we knew like this is what the future is going to hold, why would we not work towards that? Like why would we not start on that? It's almost like this kind of extra motivation, which I think is a really interesting creative brief, from this what is it, in Malaria Must Die campaign.
The article you shared to prepare for this story, it kind of talked about like David having a conversation with his children and about how one that talks about like how his personal investment in this and being part of this organization is because the disease affects so many children, and he then kind of talked about his children and the possibility of it ending it in the disease being like eradicated in his lifetime. He talked about just he talked about like how this is like an enormous endeavor, but it's going to require a lot of leadership, teamwork, hard work, and I started somewhere and I was going to loop back to the point, so this might just make the chopping block. But so what were you saying?
Well, I was even just thinking, as you were talking about like his children, like how powerful would it be for us to be able to kind of see ourselves even in the future, right? So like thinking about the creative side of this campaign, like kind of what we're looking at in a very iconic person of David Beckham, being alive in however many years in the future. It's probably about 25 or 30 years that they've aged him, because I think he's in his 50s now, right? So they've aged him 25, 30 years, and just seeing like that personal connection, especially with the face, like, and being able to understand like, oh wow, like this is what that looks like, this is how that appears to us, and like being able to make that connection even to ourselves to say, is there anything that I can do to be a part of that future? Where David Beckham is standing on this stage saying it's over, this thing is finally gone from our planet.
I mean, it's a creative approach to inspiring somebody to the end goal. Is like some often it's kind of from the perspective like, this is what's happening now, this is what needs to change. That is very inspiring and that can be a powerful motivator in its own right. But being able to like have that just optimistic imagination, or to see like this is what's possible, and then be able to like walk backwards about what needs to be done to get to that place.
Absolutely. 100%.
So speaking of handsome men looking towards the future, Ryan Reynolds, he has a company, but like
marketing agency, something.
Vanity project. That's kind of how they present themselves. But either way, they're it's a group or a company called Maximum Effort, and they specialize in like advertising. And if you're familiar with the movie Deadpool and like the all the commercials that kind of will hype that movie up, Maximum Effort was responsible to blame, to credit, however you want to, look at look at those ads. Maximum Effort was behind it all. And one of their latest project has been hitting social media and a lot of news stories this week is about the match made in hell. Satan and 2020. It's a little commercial about the love story that we're all a part of. It's an ad for Match. The parent company for a lot of
Match.com and what
Tin-
others?
Tinder? Maybe not.
No, I don't think so. Can't remember.
We are clearly
Obviously
very
we're not
deep
very
in the dating game.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know anything about dating.
But nonetheless, Match.com, the parent company for a lot of social, or not social, but like online dating. Basically, this ad features Satan in hell doing his thing, and he gets a match from the woman of his dreams and a lot of our nightmares. 2020, but please call her 2020. And it's really tongue in cheek. It's a really tongue in cheek spot. They do like the typical things of a first date, like they meet in public, and they introduce themselves, and it's very awkward. But then they smile, make eye contact, that the sparks fly, the chemistry is there, and then insert Taylor Swift. It's a love story, and we have a montage of them dating at a gym that's closed down because welcome to 2020. They're taking a date at an empty stadium because, again,
social distancing.
Yeah, and like taking selfies in front of a dumpster fire, and of course raiding toilet paper. And so it's a really cool, funny spot, very tongue-in-cheek about the present time we're in. But the tagline for this spot ends with make 2021 your year because 2020 is already taken. And again, kind of, we were just talking about looking to the future as a way to kind of market and like sell ideas. I just made this observation just now. It's like a couple of years ago, like nostalgia was like the big selling point for so many products and movies, and like Stranger Things and everything else was just like very rooted in that 1980s aesthetic. And so it's just really fascinating to see like how trends and like cultural what people respond to evolves over time, specifically based off of how we're interpreting the present.
Yeah, we are kind of coming back around, especially like I don't think anybody really wants to remember 2020 as a year, right? And so we're all kind of in this moment of like, well, hopefully next year is better. Obviously, we don't have that guarantee. We don't have that, that's just not guaranteed. And so I think it's interesting to see some of these companies and organizations taking advantage of kind of that hope, that next year can be better, and it will be different, but we need to kind of look at this year as like I'm not gonna say like a total loss, but like it's like kind of like chalking it up and saying, okay, well, that didn't go quite as we all thought it would. So let's let's go ahead and move to thinking about the future here. I'm actually, now that you pointed that out, I'm trying to even think like, have we seen any other campaigns this year that have even taken advantage of that thought? And I don't know that I've seen any that have like really said like, hey, this year, whatever, but be looking to next year or the future in some way.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think one of the bigger indicators for sure is like, you know, Google. Every year they do like the year in search.
Yep. This year.
And so I think I expect them to definitely. There's no avoiding all of the things people have been searching for the year 2020. I guess it's a minor indicator. The Bible app, they kind of have their own like release their top searches of the year, and so some things were like very, you know, steady, like hope and no spoiler. They were talking about like love and peace are the typically the top two searched items, but this year hope was the newest, the new top search, and so again the idea of looking forward and trying to
make it through what we're going through and seeing the other side of something.
And if you know, just that niche or that segment of users is an indicator of what other people are experiencing, I think we can expect to see a lot more looking forward in terms of just in general, because you know that goes everything from like obviously marketing, but then there's the whole new political people and their new perspectives and expectations. There's going to be and I'm also expecting to see a lot less reboots. So
there you go.
Because nostalgia won't be that strong of a selling point anymore.
Right. Absolutely.
But yeah, you know, another way of looking at the present and looking forward to the future, or you know, just making the most of the moment or maximizing the moment. HBO Max, maximizing the moment.
I knew it was coming, and I didn't see how that segue was going to happen. Shoot. All right, let us know. Do you want us to do a supercut of all of Simon's segues?
Just to make them more elaborate with each topic. Yeah, but HBO Max, they're the streaming service for Warner Brothers, not Warner Brothers, but just Warner Media.
Yep.
And like all of the movies that weren't released this year that were pushed back, they're kind of pivoting like so many other movie studios are you know stuck with doing. They decide their big announcement. I'm sure by the time this is out, you'll already be aware of it. But nonetheless, it's still very exciting. Starting December 25th, HBO Max and available theaters will simultaneously release their new movies. And yeah, it's a game changer.
Yeah. And December 25th is going to be Wonder Woman?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And I think that
they're starting with Wonder Woman, and then they're going to be, and they're doing this through 2021. So all their movies they're going to be doing that for. Yeah,
and that was, Wonder Woman was kind of like one of the kind of like litmus tests in terms of cinema releases. I remember the summer Tenet was kind of like, will Tenet be the movie to save cinema and theaters? And it was not.
No.
It was you know, a financial loss, I'm sure, but it's also, you know, a learning opportunity
for sure.
To see like, all right, as disappointing as it, you know, I mean, if I had a hazmat suit, I would probably love to see Tenet in theaters, but it's also since technically it's a movie about time traveling, you can all imagine that we've seen it, but we haven't seen it yet. That'll just make as much sense. That sentence makes just as much sense as the movie I've heard, from what I've heard. What was I saying?
So HBO Max. So Warner is basically running an experiment here.
Yes.
And so they're going to be releasing these movies on HBO Max in theaters on the same day, whatever that release date is going to be. They're going to be on HBO Max for 1 month. Do you going to have to pay an additional rental fee? Do you know about that? I know Disney Plus did that for a couple of their releases.
Oh yeah, like Mulan. I remember that.
Yeah. So
I don't.
and somebody else did that too. I can't remember who it was, but
I don't remember. I haven't read anything about that part.
okay.
But from what I'm understanding, this sounds like it'll be like a happy medium for like if you don't have. I don't have HBO Max. You have the option to like see it in theaters. If that's your situation.
Yep.
Or if you have HBO Max, you don't have to wait for that release.
Right. Well, kind of. Right. Kind of. Because it's going to be available for a month.
Yeah. So
and then it'll be out. And then you'll have to wait whatever that normal period is, 6 to 9 months for it to be available on streaming and DVD, etc.
And with that in mind, it sounds like it'll be a way to not necessarily like cheat, but like kind of like it'll be a way to like measure like opening release for movies, because that's still like a strong indicator for a lot of studios, and like did they make a return on their investment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tenet wasn't effective in terms of like the traditional theater release, and then we talked about Mulan earlier, just like how that wasn't popular by by just like tacking on price on top of like the subscription fee,
right?
And a lot of other controversial things that has been discussed already.
I wonder if we're going to see because let's say it works, right? Let's say it works and Warner decides to do this, other studios pick this up. I wonder if we're going to see kind of a shift, obviously in a kind of post COVID type world, where theater going becomes more has to evolve the experience beyond just going to see a movie. So like you mentioned earlier that you would love to go see Tenet, especially if you can see it in an IMAX theater.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Like there are certain movies that you just need to see on the big screen. Interstellar being one that comes to mind for me, right? Like seeing that movie on the big screen was like nothing I've ever experienced.
Right.
So I wonder if we're going to see the theater industry have to evolve something in that experience when we can just as easily see it at home, in 4K on our beautiful big TVs that are now coming down in price as well. So, the big screen kind of high res kind of experience that we normally look for in a movie theater is no longer the only selling feature, for that. It has to be more about that IMAX like experience or something else. I don't know what that is, Yeah,
like these are things like questions that like filmmakers have been like facing for over a decade now, since with DVD sales and Blu-ray and like the home theater experience, and now like streaming has really just accelerated that conversation of term like more people on the go are able to like really they're expecting to watch movies like personally like on their own laptops, and like they're very satisfied with that. And then so I think with that expectation, it'll just kind of like change really the type of stories that can get to be told. And I think that'll be really cool, because since we don't need those big blockbusters to kind of like really push people towards like these big experiences, to kind of like just really the big every subwoofer and like the mega screens, you're going to be able to really be invested in like more narrative or emotion, just engage in a different type of story that is
for sure
smaller, more intimate.
And I wonder, even like you're saying, smaller, intimate story, I wonder if we might even see kind of an evolution of like maybe we're not going to theaters to see movies anymore, but we're going to experience miniseries. You know, so like maybe like Lord of the Rings, you know, that TV series, like we all love seeing Lord of the Rings on the big screen. So I wonder if like you kind of begin to create a world where it's now more about going to see this series of maybe shorter style films or something that is the kind of experience that you just can't get at home, even with, you know, your 85-inch 8K TV, you know, whatever it is.
I think, it is interesting. Like, one of my favorite things about cinema and movies is like it's a way to kind of really have people from different backgrounds experience a single narrative and kind of like the different emotions and ideas that just encompass that. And so, you know, the theater is the obvious example. Like you're like in proximity with all these different people, but like a good streaming show, you're able to really connect with people beyond that in terms of just like the obviously the memes as funny as they can be, like they're a way of like really continuing the conversation of like the different ideas and moments that kind of really captivated so many people's attentions and imaginations. A lot of like think posts or just I guess to answer your question, I think that series is in the future will be an example to really experience that communal narrative experience, but in a more as less you'll be able to experience that less as a moment, but more as a micro movement, because it'll be stretched out over time from different episode releases, and then being able to experience it again in different mediums like articles, memes, etc. Just talking about like how how our experience of taking in new ideas are changing over time, or being able to experience something that we're used to, like movies, and it looks different now. It's just really interesting to see a new approach for something familiar. And I think another great example is our next topic, the Courage for Life Bible. And what's unique about this is not that what this is like it's a new audio Bible, but what's new about this particular version is that it'll be the first ever recorded entirely by women. And when I first saw this, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Both the Bible and women have been around for a minute. The company behind this project, they're really focused, and they work primarily with a lot of at-risk women. And from their experience, a lot of these women just have terrible relationships and experiences with men, and that kind of really these experiences are so powerful. Like all experiences are powerful, and they kind of like help shape the way we view the world. And one of the things this project aims to do is kind of like lower that barrier of entry into the source of hope and inspiration and encouragement for so many people, by making it accessible, by sharing, or more accessible, or more palatable, more tangible. And I think that's really dope. And
it's really interesting to me as well, just thinking about the psychology of a woman who's been abused or has been through a really traumatic experience, usually at the hands of a man. And so their theory is like, and this is backed up. The founder of this organization cites a study from the Department of Health and Human Services, where they basically have these, I guess, PTSD like reactions to a man's voice, and then experiencing this source of hope, as you say, through a man's voice is very traumatizing.
Yeah.
And I think, this is, in the last episode, we even talked about like accessibility, and like how this is lowering that bar for, unfortunately, a significant number of people, and not just, women who are in prison, women who have been abused, women in many different walks of life and many different areas and arenas. And now they can consume this and listen to it without that fear.
Yeah.
And, I think it's a really powerful use of this technology for sure. They got 12 different women to record that, the whole Bible. They worked with a audio engineer who's worked with Hollywood and
Broadway. I think he said,
like really excellent craftsmanship to this as well. And I think this is also speaks just to like as you said, like, wait, this hasn't been done yet?
Yeah.
Right? Like, really? We haven't done that yet? And and I think just even raising that bar and that awareness to say like, in an organization that in a lot of ways has traditionally been very kind of
male-centric
and kind of even pushed back on some of these, things, that, the churches are aware of this and able to kind of welcome this into what they're doing as well.
Yeah. It's like a, I think it's I think it's really cool. In addition to all of that, is just like how this can be both a tool for not only like the women who are going to be listening to, help, find encouragement and, so many other things, hopefully, is that, this can also be a teaching tool for like the organizations that are aiming to be effective in these areas and kind of help them be more aware of like the blind spots that people with good intentions can sometimes just have. And I think again, just going back to our last week's conversation about just like accessibility and asking the question who's here or what do they need, who's not here, what's keeping them from being here. I think this project illustrates that fantastically.
If you're interested in it, it's the Courage for Life Bible. I believe it's courageforlife.com is the website. They have their own app. It's courageforlife.org.
Okay.
Excuse me on that. They have their own app, I believe. And the other thing that I was reading that she points out, I think her name is Anne, is the founder of this organization. She points out a lot of prisons now are providing tablets to inmates. And so this is another way that can then even be making its way into women's prisons and things where they can now listen to the Bible on a tablet with a free app.
Yeah, and I thought that was just very interesting because, again, I typically think of like people consuming this type of content to be just like, either people who are regularly going to like a traditional church and wanting to supplement that during the week. But it really like opened my perspective of like, I don't want to say customers or clients, but like just other people who will be using this resource. Audience. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think again, just expanding our expectation for, expanding our expectation for accessibility I think is always a good win.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think my gears are turning. It's like there's a connection here somewhere.
I was thinking something around expanding.
Expand. It's right. It's literally right there.
It's right there, but I'm having.
Going
I've
the
been sitting. I've literally been sitting here for the last like 5 minutes trying to figure out what this segue might be because I'm so jealous of your segue game, and I'm just like,
I feel like
not at that level, and I've been sitting here trying to figure out. Anyway, we might as well just go ahead and say what it is.
something. Oh no, I got it. We're here.
Okay. We're here.
So yeah, sometimes increasing our understanding of who needs to access these services we're wanting to offer, and just all the effort that might take, that sometimes feels like going the extra mile. And so
Boom.
and
Oh,
so
man.
speaking of extra mile, we have Maker Mile's identity, new identity. You want to kind of explain what this?
Yeah. So Maker Mile, actually I hadn't heard of this before this popped up. They came out of Venice Design Week, which is a big design festival conference type thing in Venice, Italy every year. It's a platform that promotes kind of the tradition and development of the craft right now in the platform's home city in Venice. They do have plans to expand it to the future to other cities. And so, of course, Venice is very famous for its, masks and crafts and kind of artisanal kind of like jewelry and ornaments and home goods and stuff like that, and shoes fashion. I mean, it's just, for so long it was the home of all of this wonderful stuff. So this is a platform for that, and they have released a new identity. It was designed by Pentagram, one of the partners at Pentagram, Astrid Stravo, I guess Pentagram Italy and potentially Rome or London. Not exactly sure.
Yeah, they're the world's largest design they're the world's largest independent design consultancy. So
there's a very good chance that you have used something that Pentagram has designed. DC,
the new DC logo,
DC City, Polishare works is a partner at Pentagram. The Harry Potter Wizards Unite. Just all sorts of different ways. All sorts of different companies go to Pentagram. Rolls-Royce was one of the more recent high-level redesigns. So extremely influential design agency. Very, very, very well respected. Michael Beirut is one of the most notable names that comes out of there. So they have designed this identity for Maker Mile. It's a really interesting identity. Yeah. And it hits on a couple things that I've seen kind of as a trend in recent years with identity and logo design. But to give you a little bit of a kind of idea of what it looks like if you're not watching, is that it's kind of this really heavy set, very kind of thick, bold typeface, Maker Mile. And the L in the mile, it's all caps, and the L in the mile, the kind of lower part of that L is extended, stretched out. And they've done that so that they can extend that and stretch it out for, well, a mile, I guess, if they want to. But they use it in a lot of different applications where they'll kind of overlay these items that get made and things like that in the city, in Venice specifically, over it. And so they have that, and then they can put it in different they even have it draw the outline of different objects and shapes and things like that. And so this kind of expands to open up to kind of help a lot of these elements come into the identity. And this actually hits on a very common trend now, where we are seeing more of these identities and logos envelop and encompass kind of the objects or the things that they are designed for. And I suspect it's because it's very difficult nowadays to design an abstract mark that hasn't really already been done. Which is, you think about a logo, you think about the Nike Swish. there's only so many of Nike swooshes that exist with abstract geometric shapes. You know, there's only so many sides you can put on a rectangle. There's only so many ways you can combine a circle. Excuse me. And you know, all that kind of stuff. Like there's only so many times you can do that. And so I think we're beginning to see kind of this more image driven identity system come to life. And I think there's a very successful use of it. You know, they have a lot of bright colors. They bring the colors for this identity from a lot of the kind of muted colors of these Venetian kind of objects that get made. So like the fashion, the kind of the jewelry, all these things usually have some very kind of muted colors. And so they brought a lot of that into the identity. And their idea is that they can then kind of adapt that whatever city they go to next with that city's kind of objects and identity expression, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one thing about design that, especially modern design, that I think is just really, really dope. Just the ability to kind of like unify these different products, platforms, environments, but still having like this cohesive aesthetic.
Yeah.
And yeah, just being able to see the different applications or this Maker Mile logo or image can kind of then be applied to like where the stretched out bottom part of the L it really creates this whole fill in the blank type of opportunity, and kind of then invites other creatives to make their mark as part of this collective.
And I think it speaks to how a lot of times we'll say that good design is invisible. And this is almost literally becoming invisible to the objects that it's supposed to represent. And the what I assume are very kind of small level craftsmen and artisans in the city that have partnered with, you know, Maker Mile. You know, they have one of their applications where I assume this is glass blowing, and it's all these kind of very, I guess, floral almost looking kind of objects that are kind of even some in front of the line, some behind the line, and kind of gives it this 3D aspect that really envelops it. And it's, you know, I think like this, in even our next example of the identity for this week, which is Discovery Plus, like they're using a similar idea where they create logo or object as window, and you see kind of the application or the things that this organization is about through the logo, and that has become increasingly popular in recent years. So
I think and I just think that is so cool, just to be able to just like that being able to tell that message as a company or organization, like these are the possibilities that you're just getting samples of.
Absolutely. It does make you kind of want to say like, okay, now what is next with this, you know, especially with, you know, kind of their base identity is basically just tan and black. So it's literally letting even the color and the emotion of the thing shine through. Which in some ways I think is a slightly dangerous approach, because it makes it almost like emotionless. Like there's almost nothing in there. There's no substance, because ultimately, like when you create a new identity or a new logo, there, you know, you look at like the Nike swoosh as an example, or the Apple logo, and like there is a lot of meaning that you attach to that. Whereas with something like this, there is not much meaning yet, because you don't really have much to go off of. You know, so like we don't, you know, you and I, we don't live in Venice, so like we don't have a whole lot of understanding or contextualization of what this Maker Mile logo means, but we can kind of begin to get an idea of that with these elements. And in some ways that could be almost dangerous when they, you know, if there is almost nothing there to attach emotion to or to attach meaning to.
I think
it's like too vague.
I think what you're just saying is like the comparison between like a Nike swoosh or just an iconic symbol versus this type of design where like it's featuring, it's kind of basically it's like the symbol versus the frame.
Right.
And I
Yes.
think
Excellent way to frame it. Yeah.
that's just a very fascinating approach to being a design agency or platform. It's
Right.
like, do we want to kind of like put our mark on this project and kind of then impose like all of our expectations and expectations and connections that the audience already has kind of brought in with us over time onto this product, or take a back seat and hope for the best, or
And I would suspect that was a very intentional decision for them, right? Like they no, we need these artisans' products to shine.
Yeah.
You know, and that was I would have no doubt that they talked in depth with the client about that. So it was a very intentional decision. But yeah, it can be slightly dangerous depending on like, you know, the application and how well that begins to live on, you know, in various different places. But the next piece of identity design, and in the same idea of different kind of application of frame as logo, is the Discovery Plus logo. So Discovery Channel has released their own streaming service, Discovery Plus. And they've released a logo designed by Shermayeff, Geismar, and Haviv, which is a very famous New York logo design agency. They also have a very iconic repertoire of US Open and Nat Geo, NBC, Showtime, Dominion Energy, Avery. List goes on. Very impressive list of clients. They're now working with Discovery, and they created this logo for Discovery Plus, and it's an interesting evolution beyond the normal Discovery logo system, which, you know, if you look at the Discovery Channel or even Discovery Communications, like I guess was that the parent company of those two?
Yeah.
You know, you kind of have like the Discovery word mark with like the little globe, which has become fairly iconic and, you know, something that we're all used to seeing on this in the corner of the TV or whatever. And they've kind of abstracted all that away for the Discovery Plus, and now it's kind of this D, very solid D with a circle cut out, and it's got a lot of embossing and shadows and highlights and glossiness look to it, and it's basically full of rainbow colors. It very much reminds me of the spinny wheel of death on Mac.
Ooh, I see that now.
And then it's just got Discovery Plus written out in lowercase below it. And this is in the applications, they're showing where basically you take those two very solid shapes and then you put an image inside of them, right? Yeah. So you know, some of their applications are like you see the mountains and you see someone hiking kind of coming into the frame out of those out of that logo mark, which is a really cool looking image, no doubt. You know, another one's the sea with like, you know, the symbols themselves have pictures of fish and the sea anemone in them. You know, space with like the planets in them and stuff, like really clever use of it. But this is one of those examples where you do kind of see, you know, basically the logo as window, and I'm just not sure that I'm digging it. I just can't say that I'm really digging it.
I love the logo in window.
Yes.
But I think the logo itself, the rainbow spinning wheel of death, that's kind of take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But I really I think it's really really dope, especially like for a platform like Discovery, especially like Discovery Plus,
right?
Where you already have Discovery as a channel known for, you know, just capturing the imagination and the desire for like education, and just, you know, it's in the name Discovery. And so the window, I think of it for the window, the logo as window makes so much sense, because like the logo is like the identity, and then their identity is based on like discovering, and so it's a perfect, you know, fit for me. Then
I think, and not to like be too counter, but I think I would agree with you if they had kept the globe.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm missing.
Yeah.
I think so when I look at so I saw Discovery Plus, right, and then my first thought was Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Just that's my first thought. Like, it's hard to not compare it, right? And then I'm looking at it and going, well, Disney Plus has done a great job where they've taken this iconic kind of arc that they have from all their shows and they created the plus sign out of it. And that is so beautifully done. And Discovery seems like they've kind of taken a new approach and then just slapped a plus sign on it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I wish there was something more about like creating that globe, because, you know, again, it's all about the planet. It's about, you know, all these things. Although I totally, completely agree with you on, especially on the window piece. Just wishing I had more of that globe introduced into it.
I think, just going based off of what you were saying, I think the idea of if like the globe was more prominent, and then that, I feel like that should be the place where the window is, because one, like, that's the most iconic element of the logo. But it's also just like, again, like a really compelling message, just like, here's the world and here's all the things you're going to explore inside and outside of it.
Absolutely.
A lot of companies that where the window as logo makes so much sense, because National Geographic is a channel, Showtime's a channel, then US Open, which isn't a channel but it's an event where it's like all these events are happening. So
yeah, you know, the Windows logo is a very, and not to like beat a dead horse or anything, but it is a very tempting prospect, I think. You know, specifically because there's so many, it's so hard to develop something that is unique, you know, like National Geographic is just a rectangle. Right? Like it's a yellow rectangle, and it's that yellow color that makes it so unique. And it's extremely difficult prospect, for sure.
Yeah, I can definitely see, like, you know, especially like for companies like National Geographic, Discovery, that's been around for generations now, to feel the need to, you know, not come across as stuffy and still be able to be relevant and evolve over time.
Absolutely.
And I think looking at just the clients that CG, and H have been partnering with and working with, you have like Telemundo and NBC,
PBS,
and so many other companies where their identity is about the other. They're more, where the identity is more of like, we're a platform for these other stories, events, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And I have no doubt, even looking at, you know, their portfolio, that probably had a big impact on Discovery choosing them too, you know, as saying like, wow, you guys have a lot of experience with this. So today, our last topic. So I'm just not as good at segues as you are.
Oh, I guess this is a bit of a leap. What are we doing? It's
and sometimes we just can't, like, you know, it's not going to happen. But for this one in particular, I'm just like,
I'll just give you some slack.
Oh God. Oh man.
The power of the dad jokes are just
the dad jokes. Yeah. Well, last topic is Salesforce announced this week they're buying Slack, that popular chat app, team chat and enterprise chat, for $27.7 billion.
With the B.
That's a B. That's a lot of money. It's a stock and cash deal, I believe.
Yeah.
If you care about that kind of thing.
Which I thought was just interesting to as a way for a company to transition.
Yeah. The thing is interesting about this. So there's a couple pieces here that we want to unpack. So if you're not familiar with Salesforce, they have a really big tower in New York, and they have a really big tower in Chicago, and I think they have one in San Francisco too, if I remember.
Like skyscraper towers, or okay,
yeah. anyway, they're a sales platform. So like their main thing, the thing that they started out with was a CRM, customer relationship management. It's called Customer 360, and it's basically like enterprise sales. Like big organizations use it to manage sales, leads, pipelines, customers management. They do e-commerce. They do all sorts of stuff. So this is really, adding Slack into that is really kind of giving them this solid, like almost like Microsoft Teams, like, Microsoft Office, like kind of suite of tools for businesses to use on their platform. I believe Salesforce was one of the first organizations to really kind of come up with this cloud, like keeping this data in the cloud, so you don't have to use a local system. And so Slack is coming into them, kind of bringing them into the fold. Enterprise team communication abilities. If you're not familiar with Slack, probably live under a rock.
Yeah.
But it's basically a great little chat app. We've been using it off and on since 2012, 13, 14, something like that.
13, 14, yeah.
So a couple years now. And they have quickly grown from just a little tiny startup to $27 billion acquisition, which is nothing to sneeze at.
Not at all.
And for a long time, Slack has felt like kind of like this underdog, or
it's felt like the tool for startups.
Yeah.
By a startup is like we get it. We're here for you.
Yeah, and like the almost like the anti-communication tool, right? Like their whole thing was like, you don't have to use email anymore. You don't have to worry about that stuff. You just hit them up, just like using Facebook Messenger or iMessage or whatever. And I think it's really interesting to see that they have now been acquired by what is arguably one of the largest technology companies in the world. And they've kind of gone from underdog to essentially the incumbent in the industry now. Like they are it. Like they are the gold standard in team communication. So yeah, I mean, I think it's given it more legitimacy for sure, especially to larger companies. But to me, it's almost like, whoa, you guys sold out.
Yeah.
Well,
it's kind of interesting too what you were talking about, like the 27 billion is nothing to sneeze at, but I think you told me it's like Slack hasn't been profitable like in its entire existence.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Which is one fascinating, like how something that's constantly, if that's true, taking L's financially, how it can still be worth so much. It's either you're either falling from a very high cliff, which but that doesn't really work with the whole small startup that Slack had is known for. So for me, I'm just left thinking like just the different ways that value can be applied to a company or really anything.
Just small note. I misread the profit thing.
Okay.
They lost. So when they went public in April 2019, they lost half of its market value, and then they failed to turn a profit in the last 3 quarters this year.
Oh.
So even despite the COVID-19 remote work kind of
surge. Man, that does hurt.
So yeah. So just small correction there.
That is. It's pontificate. I like doing that anyways. Just like take a nugget and then like pontificate on how far that can go. But yeah.
One of the things. So, and this is very common in the startup world, where literally the definition of a startup is a company that grows fast. Like that's all it is. And often in order to do that, you need bukus of money, right? You need lots of money, you need lots of talented people to make it happen. And you need lots of money to buy, advertising and market and all that kind of stuff, acquire customers. And so, from my perspective and looking at this and looking at the tech world in general, like you have several of these startups that have never been profitable. WeWork was never profitable. Uber, DoorDash lose tons of money every year.
Right.
But they are some of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting to see kind of this trend evolving where, yes, we believe this company can be profitable, but at what point do you actually have to be profitable? And do you actually have to, more importantly, have a really solid plan? Because Slack is not alone in this world. Mm-hmm. You have Microsoft, you have Facebook, both build really highly competitive products for Slack. Atlassian has a really highly competitive product to Slack. So, how do you do that? How do you overcome that? And I don't know, Slack offers an incredible free plan that most every place that I've ever used Slack has gotten away with the free plan.
Right.
You don't have to pay for it. But you also can't really acquire customers without doing that. Right. So, yeah, it's just it's interesting to think about, and we were even talking about we had another topic on this for about just kind of entrepreneurship in general, and like what is the purpose of entrepreneurship, especially kind of in this tech related space, which is so hot right now, and like, is it just a race to make tons and tons of money,
right? Or
as many technology companies and startup founders and people who work in the space would have you believe, is it a way to change the world?
Right.
But
you can't have both.
Right.
Like there's no fast lane for, tackling the issues or trying to solve the world's problems. That's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
With all the bootstraps you're pulling in, coughing the world. That's just, this kind of a pipe dream.
You can't use an agile sprint to change the world, right?
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking about like the tortoise and the hare.
Right. Yes.
And I think,
that's excellent. Right.
I think one of the things, and just one of my first early dad moments was like reading the tortoise and the hare to my like my kid, just to my son, just so he could like sleep, and he was probably weeks or maybe a month old, but it's just like the discipline of reading early and all of that. Mm-hmm. So we read the story, and it came down to the moral, and it's like slow and steady wins the race, and like I don't think that's necessarily true though. And I think that can be applied to like startups as well. As just like, it's not necessarily like you need to go slow to be successful, or you need to be fast to fix everything. It's really about running your race. Mm-hmm. And so like the hare, he was faster, but he kind of lost focus on the race, his finish line, and kind of focused on like what the tortoise was doing. That kind of like got him off track, and then he that's why he lost.
Yeah.
Versus the tortoise, who was like a creature built for endurance, and so like that kind of race fits his skill set rather than like a sprint,
right,
where the hare would have won easily.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like the idea of like what is the race you're going for? It's like as a startup or organization, or as an individual.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to remember too, just as creatives. It's so easy to look at what other people are accomplishing and winning awards or being featured or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, first off, is that your goal? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Is that where you find your value as a creative or whatever you're doing? Or maybe it's just, it's comparing yourself to their journey,
right.
And that's not, it can be helpful to be a motivator, but if it's too much of your focus, it can certainly be dangerous. It makes me think of a wonderful book that I've recently bought, and maybe it would be a good topic for next book club or book review. Is Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And one of his core tenets in that is that there are certain things that we do in this world, in this life, that we traditionally will treat as a game to be won or lost, but is really more of a journey to be had. And business and being a creative, doing certain things is one of those things. It's not necessarily a game that you can win. And I think looking at even, as we're talking about Salesforce buying Slack is like, yeah, I mean, Slack's founders, they're making tons of money. They're probably set for life. They don't ever have to work another day in their life if they don't want to. But looking at that and going, is that my goal?
Yeah.
Is that what I want to do? If I'm trying to start a company, or if I'm trying to run my own agency, or if I'm trying to be, a freelancer or whatever it is, and is that what I am trying to get towards? We can sit here and slam Slack all day long, and it's a great thing and obviously there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. But I think it's just interesting to think about and for us to remember, like, run your race, right? And do the things that you feel like you are trying to do.
That's all we have for you this week. We appreciate you hanging around. If you like what we're doing, subscribe and review us on your podcast app and tell your friends. If you want to chime in or share something that you think we should talk about, email us at kinetikcreators@gmail.com. That's KINETIK, creators@gmail.com. Until next time, thanks guys. Peace.